The Dark Ages were not what you think. I'll explain why. First, a question. Was the Dark Age really a time of decline? Or was it one of the most innovative periods in human history? For centuries, the term Dark Ages has conjured up images of ignorance, barbarism, and a Europe plunged into chaos after the fall of the Roman Empire. Many believe it was a time of cultural stagnation, where science, art, and learning came to a grinding halt. But what if everything we thought we knew about this era was wrong? What if the so-called Dark Age was actually a period of immense innovation, scientific progress, and cultural transformation? What if medieval scholars, architects, and philosophers actually laid the foundation for the Renaissance well before it began? History is often told by the victors, but by taking a closer look at the evidence, we may uncover a much different story. We'll explore how the Middle Ages shaped modern society in ways most people never consider. From groundbreaking technological advancements to the preservation of ancient knowledge, we'll uncover the hidden brilliance of an era often dismissed as being primitive. When we're done, you might see the Dark Ages in a whole new light. Why do we call it the Dark Ages in the first place? The idea that medieval Europe was a time of backwardness was largely popularized during the Renaissance because scholars wanted to distinguish their era as one of enlightenment and revival. The term was later reinforced by 18th and 19th century historians. They viewed the Middle Ages as inferior to classical antiquity and the Industrial Revolution. In reality, medieval Europe was far from stagnant. While the Roman Empire collapsed in the West, the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive for another 1,000 years. Meanwhile, powerful civilizations in the Islamic world, China, and India made enormous strides in mathematics, medicine, and philosophy, thus influencing Europe through trade and scholarship. The misconception of the Dark Ages also comes from the loss of centralized authority in Europe, which led to fragmentation. However, this political decentralization led to the rise of local governance, feudalism, and systems of law that would eventually evolve into modern European states. Medieval monasteries became centers of learning, preserving and copying ancient Greek and Roman texts. The famous House of Wisdom in Baghdad translated and expanded upon these works, keeping knowledge alive that would later fuel the Renaissance. Far from being a time of ignorance, the Middle Ages were a crucial bridge between the ancient and modern worlds. Did you know that some of the world's most important inventions came from the so-called Dark Ages? While the image of medieval Europe often revolves around knights and castles, this period saw a technological revolution that shaped the future. One of the most groundbreaking advancements was the heavy plow. This allowed European agriculture to expand and thrive in previously unworkable lands. The expansion resulted in increased food production, population growth, and the expansion of towns and trade networks. Another transformative invention was the mechanical clock. Timekeeping had long been based on sundials and water clocks, but medieval engineers devised intricate clock mechanisms that set the foundation for modern timekeeping. Similarly, improvements in windmills and watermills revolutionized energy use, making labor more efficient and driving economic growth. The spread of universities during this time was also crucial. Institutions like the University of Bologna and Oxford were founded in the medieval era, creating intellectual hubs that studied law, medicine, and philosophy, disciplines that remain central to education today. Was medieval Europe truly isolated, or was it part of a global exchange of ideas? The Middle Ages saw an incredible transfer of knowledge between civilizations, particularly from the Islamic world and Byzantium. While Europe was politically fragmented, the Islamic Golden Age flourished. Cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo became intellectual powerhouses, preserving and expanding upon Greek, Roman, and Persian knowledge. Scholars such as Al-Khwarizmi, who developed algebra, Ibn Sina, a pioneer of medicine, and Alhazen, who made groundbreaking discoveries in optics, transformed science. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire preserved classical Greek learning and transmitted it back to Europe through trade and diplomacy. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 saw many Greek scholars flee to Western Europe, bringing their vast knowledge with them and fueling the Renaissance. Without these intellectual connections, the Renaissance as we know it would not have happened. The Dark Ages were, in many ways, an age of illumination, just not in the way we were taught. Could you imagine a world without banking, universities, or even modern legal systems? Many of these institutions trace their origins to the medieval period. Medieval Italy saw the rise of banking, with families like the Medici pioneering financial systems that influenced global economics. The Catholic Church played a role in shaping legal traditions, some of which still influence European and international law today. Even democracy owes something to this period. The Magna Carta of 1215 laid the groundwork for constitutional government, limiting the power of the monarchy and establishing principles of justice that would inspire democratic movements centuries later. Chivalry, while often romanticized, helped establish codes of conduct that influenced modern military ethics and international relations. The concept of just war, for instance, was deeply rooted in medieval philosophical debates. How did medieval warfare shape the modern battlefield? The Middle Ages saw significant advancements in military technology and strategy, many of which still influence combat today. One of the most iconic innovations was the castle, fortified strongholds that transformed defense strategies across Europe and beyond. Unlike the simple wooden structures of earlier centuries, medieval castles evolved into towering stone fortresses, complete with moats, drawbridges, and impenetrable walls designed to withstand sieges for months or even years. Weaponry also advanced rapidly during this era. The longbow, perfected by the English, revolutionized ranged combat and played a decisive role in battles like Agincourt. The crossbow, banned by the Catholic Church for its lethal efficiency, allowed even untrained soldiers to take down heavily armored knights. Meanwhile, gunpowder weapons made their way into European warfare, gradually rendering traditional knights obsolete. Tactics and military organization improved as well. The rise of professional standing armies replaced the reliance on feudal levies. Mercenaries became a crucial part of warfare, and battlefield formations became more complex, relying on strategy rather than sheer numbers. The medieval period saw the early formations of what would later become modern military doctrines. Was medieval medicine as primitive as we imagine? While it's true that some treatments seem bizarre by modern standards, such as bloodletting or charms against disease, many medieval medical practices laid the groundwork for modern healthcare. Medieval hospitals, often run by monasteries, provided structured medical care long before modern hospitals ever existed. Places like the Hospital of St. John in Jerusalem and Islamic medical centers in Baghdad and Cordoba functioned as early healthcare institutions. They offered treatment, surgery, and even quarantine areas for contagious diseases. Medieval doctors studied texts from Greek, Roman, and Islamic scholars, refining surgical techniques and herbal remedies. The famed surgeon Al-Zarawi developed surgical instruments still in use today. Hildegard of Bingen, a medieval nun, documented extensive knowledge of medicinal plants that influenced later pharmacology. Public health measures, though rudimentary, were also present. Medieval cities implemented early sanitation laws, and after the devastation of the Black Death, quarantine systems were established to prevent the spread of disease. These principles later formed the basis for modern epidemiology. While medieval medicine lacked the scientific rigor of later centuries, it was far more advanced than commonly assumed, bridging the gap between ancient and modern medical practices. The so-called Dark Ages were not a period of ignorance, but rather a time of transformation, ingenuity, and cultural exchange. The innovations of medieval society laid the foundation for many of the institutions, technologies, and systems we take for granted today. From engineering breakthroughs to the preservation of ancient wisdom, the Middle Ages were a vital bridge between antiquity and the modern era. We have seen how warfare evolved into a sophisticated science, how medieval scholars refined medicine, and how global connections fueled progress even in the most turbulent times. The very notion of the Dark Ages is a product of later historical biases, failing to recognize the era's extraordinary contributions. If there is one lesson to take from this period, it's that history is never as simple as it seems. By revisiting the past with an open mind, we uncover stories of resilience, intellect, and creativity that defy outdated stereotypes. The Middle Ages remind us that every era, no matter how misunderstood, plays a crucial role in shaping our world. History is full of surprises, and the Middle Ages are just one example of how the past is more complex than we think. What was the most surprising fact you learned about the Middle Ages? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into history's most fascinating stories. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.